This is a podcast from Occupy Radio on Student Radio in Bergen. Please feel free to leave your feedback and comments on our Facebook page, Occupy Radio Norway.
So are you! Are the 99%! 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 So are you! Are the 99%!
This is Occupy Radio with Anthony and Mr. Paulie.
Hello world, and welcome for the 13th and final installment of our humble little show, which we call Occupy Radio. And as usual, we are sitting in the studios of Student Radio in Bergen. And who are we, I hear you ask? We are myself, Mr. Paulie, and we are the amazing Anthony Hill.
Thank you.
And the remarkable Rune Storetvedt.
Hello.
And Anthony, as usual, you are starting us off with a quote.
I do. I have a quote for you from Robert M. Hutchins. It goes like this: "The death of democracy is not likely to be an assassination from ambush. It will be a slow extinction from apathy, indifference, and undernourishment."
Aha, and I feel that we're looking towards a theme here, because I have one as well, by Shannon L. Alder, and it goes like this: "Apathetic people sit back and wait for things to get better before they move. Radical people make things get better by how they move." And who better? Well, you can tell what our theme is today, perhaps. Can you?
Well, I don't know. It's
We're
about getting up and standing up for your rights and for everybody else's rights and for the planet, Mr. Paulie.
And what better song to go to than Get Up, Stand Up by the legend Bob Marley.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight. Get up, stand up. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right.
Yes, and that, of course, is the legendary Bob Marley with Get Up, Stand Up. And Anthony, we implied what the show may be about today. Would you want to give us some more information?
It is. Well, over the course of Occupy Radio, we've tried to pinpoint and analyse what's happening in this big, wide world of ours, Mr. Paulie, and why there's so many crises, many of which are caused by institutions that profit from, or at least blind to the misery of others, and all of which are converging at this moment and which will impact every living being. Now, Occupy Wall Street has prompted a groundswell of both indignation and activism that has spread to every corner of the globe and is steadily growing. But the biggest enemy to inequality is perhaps apathy. And apathy, Mr. Paulie, is maybe the worst thing I know.
Yes.
I think apathy is the opposite to love, in a way. So it would follow that if we need less apathy, then we need more love. Renowned psychologist and psychiatrist Dr. M. Scott Peck, who wrote one of my favourite all-time books, The Road Less Travelled, defined love as follows: "The will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth." And he comments on his definition by making the following point. And the point is, to extend oneself implies effort. When we are loving, our love becomes demonstrable or real through our exertion, meaning that we would take the extra step or go the extra mile for something or someone we love. And I'd like to suggest that many, if not all, our listeners are with us today because they are loving individuals with love for themselves, love for the human race, and for the planet as a whole. And what I'm also suggesting today is that apathy is actually bad for your health, Mr. Paulie, bad for society, and is no way to live a fulfilled life. Today's show is the final in our 2012 Occupy Radio series. It's about activism, and as a special treat for ourselves and our listeners, we have a studio guest who is quite well known. He's quite a well-known activist, and he's going to participate in a discussion about activism today. His name is Per Rune Hollop. Welcome, Per Rune.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a bit about your background, Per Rune? What are you? What do you do?
Well, I'm a senior 50-plus electronics engineer originally, but I'm studying more of the human nature now than studied electronics and engineered computers.
Mm-hmm.
My activism started way back in the 80s when we had this against atomic war and atomic missiles and all this kinds of stuff. But after some time, I started to waking up every morning against something, and I started to, is there not something else? Is there something I can work against for? So I read this small story about from Albert Hirschman. He said that people have essentially two possible responses when they meet injustice. One is rise up with their voice. The other one is exit, withdraw from the relationship. So I'm now studying 20 years how can people exit? What are the possibilities? What are the options for people to exit into?
Per Rune, Anthony mentioned that apathy is one of the biggest challenges for activists. Do you feel that sometimes you're fighting a lost cause? That there's too much apathy around there. Is that the worst thing, apathy, or is it opposition the worst?
No, it's the apathy, and you see that all over when people faces huge challenges, huge catastrophic events. They often end into apathic, emotionless action, and that's the main problem, because people doesn't action towards a better situation for themselves.
What do you like least about being an activist? We can focus on the negative first and build up to the positives. What are some of the disadvantages for you of being an activist?
My main problem is that I see what's going wrong, and I'm not capable to manage to get things right because I can't do it by myself.
Yeah. You wouldn't be the first person that we've interviewed to say that, actually.
No.
What do you say on that point, Rune?
Well, I can just agree. I think that's one of the reasons why we are trying to do this, trying to reach out to find not just local listeners, but finding also listeners outside our local zone, and see whoever pops up.
Speaking of popping up, Mr. Pauly, we have a surprise for the boys, don't we?
We do. We actually have several interviews today, which we've gone out onto the streets and called people about. But we felt it was in our interest to go to the source of the Wall Street Occupy movement, and we were privileged enough to speak to one Sean
Carrier.
Carrier, yes, who's a very active member of the Occupy movement in New York City, and we're going to play an interview with him now.
Sean, can we ask you what actually got you into activism in the beginning? Was it one event or thing that made you choose to devote part or some of your life to activism, or did it build up over a long period of time?
Well, it was kind of something that I was always waiting for, and the minute that Occupy found me, I kind of knew that it was what I was waiting for. But I hadn't been involved in much activism, kind of some anti-war stuff when I was in college against the Iraq War. I definitely had the spark and, the anger against the injustices in the world, but hadn't become an activist by any stretch of the imagination until I was walking down the street one day when I was on my lunch break from work, and it was September 22nd, the sixth day of Occupy Wall Street, and it was the day of the Trayvon Martin. I'm sorry, not Trayvon Martin. It was the day of the Troy Davis march. It was the day that Troy Davis, a man of questionable guilt, was to be put to death by the U.S. government, and who was on death row for years, and he was sentenced to death that day. And so it was a huge march for Occupy, and I turned around and I saw just thousands of people pouring into the street, and I didn't know what was going on. I had I remember that I had heard something about Occupy Wall Street a few weeks earlier, and I remember being cynical of it because it started on a Saturday, and I said, why is it starting on a Saturday? That's not going to disrupt business at all. But and I just asked somebody, where is everybody going? And they said, we're going to Liberty Square. And I was like, what is that? It sounds great. And I went with them, and I saw the General Assembly, and I heard what they were about, and I got hooked ever since then. And it's become my full-time job, my life, and everything.
Sounds fantastic. What is your particular contribution to activism?
I would say that I am very interested in communication between people and human communication and learning about each other through communication. That as long as we keep up the conversation and keep learning from each other and working out the solutions to the problems that we have and seeking understanding constantly, that we can get through anything. It's a constant conversation that's up. More practically, my role in Occupy is I work with the Tech Ops working group, who deals with a lot of technology, the internet, managing websites and things like that. I was with the facilitation group for a while. I planned a lot of actions with the direct action working group, and I've done a lot of different things. But I think my focus is to really deepen people's understanding through conversations and communication.
Okay. It sounds like you're very busy there. How do you manage to earn a living to buy food and pay your rent and all that kind of stuff?
Well, it's a funny thing. In the very beginning, I had a job for the first couple of months. And then in December of 2011, I got laid off from my job. The company actually got sold, and thousands of people laid off, as is the story for so many people all over the country, all over the world. And it was a unique time when I was in touch with a lot of people who were living in this different way that they showed me. And it was a perfect timing for me to say, I lost my job. I'm going to leave my apartment. And through an unfortunate situation that happened, I kind of did, I was thrust into that. I lost all my belongings and just lost my apartment, lost all my stuff. And I said, this would be a great time to just dive in. I started living with friends who, we shared a living space that basically, if we lived communally, that we could manage the whole thing and manage to get through on, very, very little, and share food and share everything and put in just a little bit of work for everyone, living with a lot of people, but and then, also staying with friends and, staying with friends for a couple of weeks at a time and bouncing around on couches. And I managed to get by pretty well in that way. And so I've been doing a little bit of freelance work here and there for the past year, but pretty much been a full-time activist. And as long as there's food in my belly and there's a roof over my head and I can get around by bike, then I realized I didn't need much more than that. And so I've been able to survive.
Sean, it seems like from your description, at least before you were made redundant, that you seem just like, I hate to say it, just like a normal person in a way. It sounds like a weird way of saying it, but it's like me and Anthony here in the studio too. In recent times, we've become kind of indignant. And that's what makes me like this movement, that it seems just you don't have to be wearing caftans and dancing around and playing hacky sack to get into this movement. My question to you, though, Sean, was what is your deep motivation? What keeps you going?
Well, before I answer that, I think what you touched on just now is very important. As I was a normal person, but then again, I was always there was always something kind of waiting to become indignant, as you say, because everybody, we talk a lot about how words and words can be deceptive and semantics are really important, and the distinction between an activist and a normal person, it puts a line there to say when you're an activist, then you're something special, you're something different. But really, what I believe is that what we do is just what any normal person should do in the face of massive injustice. And, like any normal person in their right mind should stand up and say, like, this is wrong. And when horrible things are happening, any normal person should become active against that and raise their voice. And I was a normal person. I had a job at a desk at a big corporation on Fifth Avenue, but the second that I was given the opportunity, it just clicked, and I was ready to jump into that. And we all have that potential, I think. We all have the potential to become activated.
Yeah.
In that, and people are more ready than. But going into your question, the thing that keeps me going is maybe it's something invisible and unnameable, but it's the constant desire to improve things and make them better. I wouldn't work this hard. I wouldn't push myself this hard and sacrifice all of these unnamed luxuries that I might experience if I weren't working on Occupy. But I mean, this is what I was doing. I could probably go out and get a well-paying job and have money and be able to buy things, and I don't know what you'd do with money, but it's I can't even talk about it because I just don't care.
Yeah, I get where you're going. Sean, sorry to cut you off there because we don't really have much time, but I can see where you're going there. And there's probably, the irony is in what you say is that there's probably a lot of people out there that have well-paying jobs but wouldn't push themselves half as much as you push yourself for no money whatsoever, just in the cause of trying to make the world a better place. But just to finish off here, it's been suggested that the Occupy movement has kind of moved off the streets and more into people's consciousness because we don't hear as much or see it as much in the news, even in the alternative news now. Would you agree with that statement?
I mean, I would agree that is definitely what the media are saying, and that is the narrative that they have created. And to a certain extent, even we play into the mindset that the mainstream media would like us to. But so it's also a cause, but also a result. But yeah, I mean, it never meant to just remain something that was in the street. It was meant to get into your consciousness because nothing lasts forever and everything evolves. And it was always meant to just be an idea, a way of thinking, a framework of doing things. Right now, you don't need. There is a new occupation that just happened at a university at Cooper Union in New York, and they don't have to do anything the way that we did it just because they are occupying a building in their school. They don't have to do anything similar to us at all. It's simply the fact that they're inspired by our choice to take action, and we're already with them for their struggle for fair tuition as students and rights as students, and their struggle against student debt, which is enormous. But we wish them well, and I mean, it doesn't even have to have anything to do with us because it is Occupy, but it isn't.
Sean Carrier, thank you so much for your time today in New York, and we hope that everything's going well in the aftermath of the hurricane.
Thank you so much.
See you later, mate.
And that was Sean Carrier from the Occupy movement in New York. Very interesting interview, Anthony.
Was indeed.
Runo, the impression I got from him was that there's not one manifesto, really, for the Occupy movement.
No, there isn't, and there never was supposed to be one. People were trying to make one in different sorts of ways, but I don't think that's really the big point here. Actually, I thought it was very, very interesting what he said about him talking about Occupy as a framework, and he talks about himself in the way that I would also think of myself, that he goes from a normal kind of life, and then he has to sort of go to another state where he becomes indignant.
He morphs.
Yeah, not exactly morphs. It's just that he finds out that his previous way of life isn't sufficient, and then he also talks about this. Okay, what is an activist? An activist is actually just a much, or maybe more like a normal person. It's just that it's a normal person with a purpose. He finds out that he needs to do something, and normal people have to find this way of unlocking their inherent potential, and actually doing something good and better and becoming a better person by being an activist. So being an activist isn't actually something special. It's just something waiting for you to step into, so you can become more of what you were supposed to be.
And it provides fulfillment and, as you say, purpose. And I think that's what's missing in, let's say, 99% of people's lives these days, because they sit in front of the bloody television or just do mindless activities.
But I don't think a lot of people actually share that sentiment, because they do feel that their potential lies locked in the career advancement.
That as well, yeah.
So they're just waiting for it, and they're working so hard to attain this career advancement that will unlock their potential.
Isn't it? I found it quite interesting that he said that the same thing as Per Rune said. The thing that got him into activism was a war and anger from that war.
Yeah. I think, and he talked about this guy Troy Davis, and
as well, yeah,
and the death penalty, which he remembers back on, and that is a very inhumane practice, I believe.
There often seems to be a clear catalyst amongst activists as well, but it can also happen that they just morph into one.
But they do have to be facing some sort of inhumanity, and then they suddenly wake up to find out, who am I as a human being? Why am I not doing more to actually
to stop this kind of thing? To change it, really.
Situation.
And on that human note, there seems to be a level of simplicity about him and a lot of other activists that I've met. He was very happy now just to, as he says, have enough food in my belly.
And a roof over his head.
And a roof over his head. And that maybe, Per Rune, you could add something with that. Do you see that you have simplified your life in many ways in order to be an activist?
Well, I'm certainly working for a positive attitude inside myself. I'm feeling I'm putting a more meaning into my own life. Personally, I have this huge challenge because I'm born with a muscle disease, which will finally put me into a nursing home. And I don't like the nursing homes like they are currently. So my activism is going towards trying to better the world by building better nursing homes.
You're making the bed that you're going to lie in, basically.
Yes, and a supporting system. So it goes both ways in a way. But I personally feel that I'm very anxious about the injustice in the world. So that's the main force driving me.
It's all about trying to make change, isn't it? And we have a great song by an Aussie artist, Mr. Paulie, who's not very well known, actually, but this is a good one of his better songs. Daniel Merriweather, his name is. It's featuring a rap artist called Whale, or I think it might be Wala or Whale. And the song is called Change.
On babies, get hired in the background, singer singing.
That was Daniel Merriweather there, an Australian, playing the song called Change. And this is a very cold afternoon here in Bergen, Norway. You're listening to Student Radio here in Bergen, and you're on Occupy Radio. And we've been talking about activism today, haven't we, Mr. Paulie?
We certainly have, and we had the privilege once more to speak to veteran Norwegian activists this week. And his name is Torstein Dahle. If you go back to one of our previous episodes, you'll hear a nice long interview with him as well. But he's the assistant professor of economics in Bergen and a leader of the Norwegian Red Party. So let's have a listen to what Torstein Dahle has to say.
Do you consider yourself an activist, Torstein?
Yes, I do. I think it's necessary to try to understand how the world works and how the capitalism works. But I think it's, first of all, important to change it. So you have to act, not only discuss.
And what got you into activism? Can you remember?
No, actually, I can't. I think,
Or was it one event in particular, or was it just did it build up over a period of time?
I think it built up during a period of time. I'm 65 years old. I was active in the last part of the war in Vietnam, which, of course, was one of the factors that made me an activist, but not the only one.
And what would you say is your main cause now?
Well, at present I'm very much engaged in the work to try to lift the siege on Gaza. But I think the general main course is to change the world to be a better place to live, and in my opinion that's now very much about getting rid of capitalism. But we have to be active in different places, in different conflicts, which we see and experience here and now. So we cannot only discuss capitalism. We have to change the world and to build up in several places with several different causes and different problems to try to fight a lot of different fights.
Fighting on different fronts at the same time.
Yes, definitely.
Fighting on different fronts at the same time. Seems like capitalism is his personal hobby horse there, Anthony.
Yeah, well, he didn't hold back, did he? And we've talked about capitalism, but he said just get rid of capitalism, didn't he, Runa?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts there?
Well, we've talked about that and how it's not socialism versus capitalism. But we are actually promoting different ways of looking at it. So I think for Mr. Torstein Dahle's, he's old school, and his way of thinking along these lines is something which has been going on for a very long time. But with the Occupy movement, we see that there are new ways of looking at things, and there are new ways of understanding money and understanding our structures, and seeing that the old ways of discussing back and forth isn't actually working.
But he mentioned that as well. Don't just speak about it. You got to change it yourself. You got to speak out about it, and it's the actions that speak louder than words.
Yeah, and we are the new generation, I think, and the way as for the Vietnam War and for when he started to be an activist, you had the curtain of the Cold War and the threat of nuclear holocaust, and we don't have that now, but we have the threat of climate change and environmental destruction, which is something. There's not just two politicians who have to decide if it's going to be all right. We all have to decide that it's going to be all right for this actually to be all right.
He also had his deep passion was the problem is in Gaza at the moment, and he was very heavily involved. In fact, a leader behind sending a supply ship to Gaza.
Yeah, he's a major contributor there.
Yeah, and we asked him now what his deep motivation for being an activist was.
My deep motivation is that I think we cannot just sit there looking at 1.6 million people within some kind of open air prison, and they suffer a lot. You see, this is very much more than a blockade in the ordinary sense of the word. It's the main idea from the Israeli side here is obviously to make it impossible for people in Gaza to make an ordinary living, to produce, to work. So they're quite dependent on aid brought in from abroad, and they are. So 80% of the people in Gaza are dependent on aid, and then because of the blockade, they have made a lot of tunnels. So there's actually a flourishing tunnel economy, several hundred tunnels, and there you can get almost everything in from Egypt, but it's very expensive. And it's actually it's making an atmosphere of illegal crime and illegality around it, and it works not at all well for the people in Gaza. Most of them are very poor. Because they have not been able to make an ordinary way of living for several years, and then they have not the money to buy the goods that come in through the tunnels. So the result is that there are some people in Gaza, some rich people in Gaza. The wage majority is poor and living under conditions that are really unacceptable, destroying the health of the young people. There are more than half of the population of Gaza is below 18 years in age. So there are about 800,000 children in Gaza, and they have their future destroyed. Some of them quite
at an early age.
At an early age, and they have damage on health
psychological damage as well.
Yes, and physical and psychological. Yeah. The water supply is more or less destroyed. More than one half of the pupils in school they suffer from what you call in English, anemia or something.
Anemia,
yes. So it's a very serious condition, and I think it's a crime to just sit there and look at it and not do anything.
Yes, Torstein Dahle there talking about what really drives him as an activist. And Per Rune, well, I guess he's focusing on the illegality of the situation and the injustice of the situation in Gaza. Per Rune, as an activist yourself, you must have some reaction to what our old friend Torstein Dahle has to say.
Yeah, I understand very well the feelings he has, also starting out hiding refugees in Norway and kept on ever since. But I feel that the worldwide situation and Gaza is not a single example. There's several similar systems all over. I think that the worldwide situation is a huge opportunity for building something new and better. But someone must walk the talk. We must walk the talk all together, and someone must go in front and show the way. And yeah.
And if there ever was a time, now is the time. And that goes into the next song by Third Eye Blind, If There Ever Was a Time.
If there ever was a time, it would be now. 'Cause all I'm saying, if there ever was a time to get on your...
You want somebody to arrest? There's plenty of crooks on Wall Street.
You're on Student Radio, and this is Occupy Radio here in Bergen. And boys, earlier this year, a legendary activist and musician visited Bergen to play a concert, and I had the opportunity to meet him for a chat. His name is David Rovics. He's very well known amongst all the Occupy Wall Street people. And he's been at countless protests and demonstrations over the last 3 decades. And I started by asking him about what kinds of people are protesting. And you have to excuse the sound quality here. There was a lot of background noise. We're in a very noisy cafe there.
What's so interesting, and what you can say as another generalization between the U.S., Greece, Spain, and the Occupy movement in Northern Europe as well, as small as it is, you can generalize with all these different countries, and I can generalize by observation personally that these movements, these groups, are mostly people who have no background in activism. And that's true in England. That's true everywhere that Occupy has been happening, or the Indignados, or the Arab uprisings. That's true with all of these different phenomena. These are mostly young people, although also lots of people of all generations. But in all these different situations, they're mostly young people, and they're mostly people who have never been to a protest. And that's, I think, very interesting and very inspiring that there's anything that's attracting these people. And what you see in the U.S. in particular is attracting, and also in the Arab world in Greece and Spain, is that it's attracting a hugely diverse groups within society.
Yeah.
It's the only movement I've seen in my lifetime in the U.S. that is bringing together what people that would self-identify as working class, and people who would self-identify as middle class, and people who would self-identify as mainstream, and people who would self-identify as alternative in some way. It's bringing them all together. And of course lots of other people think it's stupid and don't like it and whatever, but the people that are involved are coming from so many different places.
Yeah, that was very interesting about what he said about the diversity amongst the people. And if you think about us here in Bergen, you work at a university, Paulie. Runa's a nurse. Per Runa's an engineer, but is doing something else, as I understood it. I work in a pub and doing entertainment there, and Vegard is an engineer as well. And some of the other people, it is quite a diverse group, and everybody working with. There's no lazy hippies, as they say, amongst us. What's your comment there?
How come you always have to sort of kick down on the hippies?
Because, as we discussed in our previous show, the hippie movement was the beginning of the protesting after the Vietnam War, and they were all labelled. They were all labelled as no good, true. Unemployed, pot smoking.
But I think the whole labelling scheme is just a way to put people off being an activist. Don't think you can ever change the world. You cannot take the game, our capitalist game. You can't take that away from us. And we have so much invested in this. Shut him up. Shut him up. You know, it's what Bill Hicks is on about.
Yeah, it's about also they're saying that everybody has equal opportunity in America. It's the land of equal opportunity, where the unemployed have the same opportunity as the people who were born with maybe a lot of wealth. It's an illusion that they want people to believe this stuff, that everything is equal, but it's not. We are fated by whoever is our friend, whoever is our the people we meet and how they treat us. So we are the destinies of each other. Yeah. Do you have any comments on that previous interview there, Per Runa?
Well, just one thing that's come to mind is that it's easy to demolish the systems and it's so hard to build them. And you have this challenge we see now in the Arabic Spring all over, that it's very hard to build something up when everything is in ruin, and you have some extremists which can take over the whole project in a way. So there is a balance in which must be addressed.
Rovics mentions the Arab Spring, of course. Actually, it was a very long interview, which we've had to edit down quite a few minutes. But we asked him about, as an American, how he feels about the potential progress with now newly re-elected Black American president, of course, Obama, and American politics in general.
What do you think about how hopeful were you when Obama got in? Were you an Obama supporter, and what do you think now, 4 years later or 3.5 years later?
Yeah, I never had any illusions about Obama being progressive because he's part of the Democratic Party machine, and it was the Democratic Party machine that put him into the Senate seat in the first place. I mean, it was also his own brilliant oratory and all that, but it was the Chicago Democratic Party machine is the reason why Obama really got into the Senate in the first place. And and anybody that the Chicago Democratic Party machine supports, if anybody knows anything about Chicago, you should be very, very suspect of that. And he's been a complete disappointment from day one. Except the fact that he's intelligent and black. That's a great positive. That was great. That was very therapeutic. All these white people voting for a black man was very therapeutic for a lot of people. And that was a very good thing. That day was a great day. Just the fact that tens of millions of white people voted for a black man had an immeasurably positive impact on both white and black people in the United States. No question.
What do you think about his statement recently about supporting gay marriages?
Well, it's great.
Point there, do you think?
It's great, but the thing is that the Democrats always support somewhat more progressive social issues than the Republicans, and that's the only thing that differentiates the two parties. So every time they're having an election, they have to try to draw the lines along social issues, because they really have no significant differences when it comes to things like foreign policy or economics, which is what affects all of us around the world, is foreign policy and economics when it comes to the United States. But, gay marriage certainly affects some people, in some relatively small way, and it has a little bit of an economic impact on some people. It's not a big economic thing one way or the other for society as a whole. So it's the sort of thing that they can either support or oppose, just like, freedom of choice for women, or, all kinds of other little social issues that don't have a huge economic impact one way or another. And of course, and then they only really claim to have these positions because really, I don't know, among the mainstream of the politicians, I don't think any of them really feels so strongly one way or another to really care about these social issues. But they talk about them because that's what they're allowed to talk about. That's the leeway they have to actually appear to be different. But the reality in American politics is that they're all bought and sold by massive corporations. They're all just walking corporations. They are just multi-billion-dollar entities that we refer to as Congress people and presidents and Secretary of State and all this kind of stuff. But they're just corporate stooges. They are completely bought and sold by corporations. There's nothing independent about any of them, other than, a small handful in the Congress. But by and large, the overwhelming majority from both parties they're just automatons.
Very interesting stuff there from David Rovics, there, the musician. He keeps repeating the DPM. He didn't say DPM, but I think now we should have it. It's called the DPM, the Democratic Party machine. And
we should have done an anti-ad about them, shouldn't we?
Should, damn. Well, basically, he's a puppet. That's what he's trying to say. But on the positive note, it was a therapeutic day. I've never heard the
what
Obama.
do you think about that, Rena?
I wholly agree with his talking about this, but we mentioned it with another word which we called this emotional disconnection from what their policies are actually affecting. They don't have any kind of connection with what's really happening. They don't feel it in their hearts when they decide to invade Iraq or Afghanistan. They have no emotions to what kind of destruction and what they're actually doing.
And so it's the multi-billion-dollar entities which have more say.
And he also mentions that there's two major factors which isn't on the table when they're discussing this inside the American presidential election, which is foreign policy and economics. They're not treating it properly.
No. They just get up there and say what they think is the popular thing to say.
Yeah.
They sound very good. Some of them don't, but some of them do. And if they do, they normally get voted in.
Yeah.
We concluded the interview by asking him his advice to young listeners.
Well, I mean, really, I mean, also it's mass movements that usually in most of the world, throughout most of human history, it's mass movements that change anything. And if anything good happens, it's because of a mass movement. So if there's something in the world that you have a problem with and you think it needs to change, then you can be certain that a mass movement is the way to address that problem. And so, I would say, if you feel compelled to change anything, then think about that. And if you don't feel compelled to change anything, then I don't probably have much to say to you, really, because to me, there's just this overwhelming sense of a sort of moral imperative to do something about the situation on Earth, since our species is currently very much threatened with extinction, and also our species is overwhelmingly treating each other really badly, and I don't know how to convince people to have that same kind of sense of moral imperative. I mean, I think inevitably most people are not going to share it, and some people will. I try to do what I can to communicate that sense of imperative in the hopes that it'll rub off on other people, and I think it does sometimes.
I think it does too, and I think you're doing a great job, and we need more people like you out there doing what you do, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thanks a lot.
And good luck in the future with all your concerts and your work.
Thank you.
Yes, I have to agree. It's very hard to convince people or to get people on side. I try and post things on Facebook and do this and do that. But I was going to ask you, Per Rooney, because you've been doing this for so long. You've been an activist for so long. Do you find it hard to get people on board? Do you even try to get people on board, or do you just run your own race?
Well, yes, I've done both. I was in several years activism in ex-Yugoslavia. I worked together with 6 groups of young people there, something 100 young people, trying to build a new future instead of in front of the television and the shopping market.
Mm-hmm.
But well, as soon as the economic system starting to go smoothly, and then they all disappeared into the traditional economic system. So it's very hard.
Into the shopping mall and in front of the TV.
Yes, sorry. And we saw that very specific in Zagreb, the main capital in Croatia. Just a few years, they become a duplicate of Oslo with the same products, the same problems, and the same attitudes. So it's very hard. And I took this up with some of the older generations. The younger people was into this, and I asked the parents and the older people and say, hey, we've been dreaming about your way of living now for 50 years, so don't stop us in a way.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to do something.
It is. What about you, Runa? Do you get do people get pissed off? Do you actually talk to friends and colleagues about this, or do you not bother?
Yeah, I do. But I try not to overwhelm my working place with it. But I've been been talking with some of my colleagues about this stuff, and I do find some resonance, and people are generally approving of my doing this radio stuff. And but for the moral imperative, I think that is someone each and everyone has to find in themselves, because the finger pointing, it just doesn't work. It's not like like a game of it. You're it. You can't do that. People have to wake up one morning and ask themselves, who am I? What is my purpose? What is the purpose of all this? What is this little blue dot in space doing?
Yeah.
Well, it was great to hear from David Rovics, and we should hear one of his songs, I think.
I reckon that's a good idea.
This is called Who Will Tell the People?
I think that the struggle for the airwaves, for the Pacifica network, is one of the most important things going on in the country today, because it really represents a struggle for the hearts and minds of the people. And if we can't communicate to people, we're not going to be able to reach them. And this is about that. And about what they're not telling us. Why we need shows like Democracy Now! You'd think I'm really trying to ingratiate myself with the staff of Democracy Now!, but and it's true, but the CIA is pushing crack in the ghettos of LA while the food crops in Colombia get spread. Is it media or mind control, heroic victories or crimes? Who will tell the people that we're living in these times? That we're living in these times? That we're living in these times?
And that was one of our interviewees. The interviewee you just heard, David Rovics, with his song Who Will Tell the People. And we have another interviewee, Anthony, coming up. Local, is he a politician?
He says, well, I think he doesn't like to be called a politician, but he's been in one of our previous shows, and I think I asked him that, and he said he doesn't like being called a politician, but in the end he is partly a politician.
Well, we did bring it up with him, and we were standing outside. It's a very cold week this week here in Bergen, so excuse our voices if our teeth are chattering or anything like that. But his name, well, you'll find out his name as we go. Anthony, we're out here at the Bluestone here in Bergen. It's quite cold.
Oh, brass monkey weather.
We are here with Sondre Bortstrand from the local Green Party. A question to you, Sondre. What got you into activism in the first place? Was it one singular event that made you click, or did it happen over a long period of time?
Well, it started when I was 17 and looked at the world and thought, this is unfair. I have to do something.
Yeah.
So quickly I started with activism.
What were you doing at the time? Were you a student or were you working?
Yeah, I went to school at that time, so something had to happen and I started do things.
And how old are you today?
29.
But was it
12 years of activism.
Was it the people around you who made you do this, or did you have a lot of company, or was it a very individual thing?
Well, it was some other activists, a small activist environment in Tønsberg. It was some socialists, some Greens, but quite few. So I had to start a lot of things by myself and then drag other people into it.
Have you, what about your family? Do they like what you do? Are they with you on this, or have they kind of thought, he's the black sheep?
Well, I don't think they always agree with me, but I support the activism and the political engagement.
Are there any, can you tell us about some positive results from things you've done over the years?
Well, we started this initiative for reduced salting of the roads, and we collected signatures in the streets and got enough to make the city council decide on the issue, and they did not support our radical notion of no salting, but they accepted to reduce salting, and it has been 30% less salting in Bergen after that. So that's one success.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
Do you think that your activism can translate into politics at some stage?
Well, it's not impossible to combine politics with activism. I think we need both, and I don't want to be a politician just sitting at City Hall, and I want to be in the streets. So now I'm going to speak at a small demonstration in some minutes.
You're off to a rally. What's this rally about?
It's about the situation on Sri Lanka and the Tamils, how they are suppressed by the government, and students at the Jaffna University was attacked by security forces, so it's a solidarity action.
Okay, yeah, that's something you've always been quite involved in over the years, isn't it?
Yeah, our government tried to make peace in Sri Lanka as well as in Palestine and everywhere else. We try to make peace. It's still well, it doesn't work.
There's still many challenges ahead. Well,
yeah, lots of great words there on both local and international activism there from Sondre Bortstrand. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice guy, Sondra there, yes, talking about some of the positive results with the road salting. Per Runa, can you talk about some positive results you have seen in your days, things that you've worked on?
Well, I have, as I mentioned, a more practical approach to things rather than demonstrating and raising my voice. Focusing on local solutions based on local needs and local resources. I've managed to drag some of the young activists into practical work in gardens or other work which we have done, and I feel that that's been a sort of team building inside the group, which are very positive. I feel. Yeah.
What about you, Runa? Any positives that you can see over your years of activism?
No, I've been well. This radio show has been positive, and the teamwork that we're starting on now, I feel it's like a we've been sort of planning for a journey, and the boat is about to leave for the high seas. I think because this radio show has made me think about a lot of stuff, and the people I've been working with in the last year has been just fantastic, and if we stick to our plans, I think we can come a long way. And also tying network with Sondre and Torstein Dahle and many other people here in Bergen, talking to them and understanding that there are a lot of good forces that are at work to make a better world.
We've had a lot of good feedback from people all around the world too from this show, from the podcasts on and our YouTube channel. And we actually haven't mentioned it yet, have we? That we do have podcasts on Facebook, and we have a YouTube channel called Occupy Radio Norway. So if anybody wants to listen to it again or any previous shows, just go and search it on YouTube or Facebook.
But yeah, it's about keeping your eyes wide open, isn't it? So here's Gautier with a song of the same name. And that was Gautier with Eyes Wide Open. No coincidence there, another Aussie. Are we being too patriotic, Anthony?
Not at all.
Well, no, we're not. And we have the pleasure, of course, for the last time, of our good friend up in Trondheim, and that's Vegard Bilsbach. Hi, Vegard.
Hello, Polly.
How you doing, Vegard?
I'm doing okay.
It's about -8 here. How was it up there?
It's below -10 actually, so it's cold.
Have you got your little sort of slippers on and warm woolen socks and woolies?
Not slippers. I have my wool blanket, so I'm okay.
Your blanket again?
But, yeah.
It always comes up.
I've been out freezing today.
Okay.
It's all right. We've always got global warming to warm things up for us.
But you know, it's not. It doesn't necessarily mean warming all over the globe. It might actually mean colder climate some places, as in Norway.
Yes, that's absolutely right. But we've been talking about activism today, Vegard, and we've spoken to various people, various activists about what got them into activism and about their actual activism, things they've done. And after all the screaming and shouting, there needs to be some kind of plan. And I was actually going to put this to Runa. Is that a big challenge, because there has to be some action afterwards, and there has to be some kind of plan and something happening.
Yeah, I want to pick up one of the things that Perina mentioned. He mentioned the Arab Spring and how it's been this conversion from a protest to becoming a something new and something lasting, and it's been sort of cooed by extremist forces. And I think that's very important also for the Occupy movement to be very, very concerned about. How is this conversion actually going to happen? What happens when you become this morally when you get this moral imperative inside yourself and you want to convert it into action, how do you actually go about it, and how do you go about it when you're a group to make these lasting changes?
Yeah, because there's so many different people and different opinions on how things should be done. Do you see it as a big challenge, Vegard?
Yeah, I think I'm a bit surprised about how that what needs to be done is not more dramatic than it is, really the focusing on local communities and building local communities, and it's much less dramatic than I envisioned when I first started my career as an activist. So it's a lot simpler and smaller things really that's gonna do the trick, at least most of it, I think, in some sense.
Yeah, I think also the major game changing is actually about the small things, but we also have some major things to change as well, as the money system and the politics, especially
energy, for example,
and also the conversion from this centralized energy production. And there are many ideas which are, when you think about it, it's simple to change, but changing people's ideas, that's the worst part, I think.
Yeah,
but I think it all starts with the small things, and that will naturally lead into bigger things. But the first thing is you have to build community and get people to work together and start cooperating.
What do you say, Per Rune?
Yeah, well, it's what I mentioned before: local solution for local needs and local resources. We have all the knowledge, we have all the methods and all this. What we really need to do is to put them into action in a way. The challenge is that people have been sleeping in front of the television and for 2 generations now in the West. So it's hard to do something practical, perhaps.
But when you get a group of 10 or 15 people in a room and all have to decide how to do things and everybody has a different opinion, don't you think it's going to be quite tough and take a long time to get anywhere?
Not necessarily. I've been a project manager for huge projects, and the way, if you focus on focus on facts, focus on the practical things which needs to be done, it's very hard to. No, it's not so very hard to convince people that they need to cooperate in order to find solutions.
Yeah, Vegard, I asked the question before. What is worse, apathy or opposition? Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, for me it's definitely apathy. The first one of the hardest thing when I first started with activism and trying to hand out flyers on the street and talk to people was people that just totally ignored you and just walked by as you didn't exist. And in the beginning, that really stings, and it's not a good feeling at all. So it's better to have people actually confront you and try to discuss with you, because if they really do, then you might get something in, even if they walk away and still have most of their opinions, then you might have planted a seed. So apathy, definitely worse.
Yeah, exactly. What about, I asked Rune about this as well, what about friends and family? Do you find it hard there? Have you found that you've maybe lost some friends or even family due to your activism?
Yeah, I guess I'm not that close with friends I had when growing up, but it's not necessarily because of my activism. But I've gotten a lot of feedback, especially in the beginning at parties. I always brought up topics I was interested in there and then. And after a while, people started saying, "Oh no, not that again! And please, can't you just drink and get drunk and shut up and talk about something else?" But then I would say I've found new friends, and we talk about more meaningful stuff.
Oh, thanks, mate. Thanks.
And, yeah, absolutely. And I've realized with time that it's no use trying to push and push and push. You just have to try to flat it in, as you say, to just bring it quietly into the discussion and try to find relevant things to other topics that you are discussing with people.
Can you give us, we talked about some positive things before, can you tell us about maybe one big positive thing that, or success you've had as an activist?
Yeah, I would say definitely the biggest success that I've had or been a part of is the screening of the last Zeitgeist movie, the Zeitgeist Moving Forward. We screened it in Bergen in January 2011, I think it was, and we spent the whole autumn making a poster, and then we ordered posters and put them up all over town. And we got this screening room. I think it was seats for 180 people or something, and there were more than 200 that came.
Wow.
So we were really, really pleased with that screening. Of course, we were a bit disappointed. We figured that maybe we would get like 10 more active people as a result of that success. But we were still the same little... the hardcore after that screening, but at least we got the movie out to a lot of people. So I think that's my what I'm most pleased with and most surprised with.
Yeah, and these little concrete steps forward, they make a big difference.
Yeah, I think that every time I connect with someone on the street and you know get a response and maybe a smile and a thumbs up to a poster I'm holding, that helps. That's really. I wouldn't have been doing this without those little moments. So yeah, it makes it worthwhile.
I'm with you there, mate. Yeah, so we have to wrap this up now. We don't have much more time, I'm afraid, but thanks for your input today and for the previous 12 shows as well, Vegard. We're going to miss you, talking to you every Friday.
Blowing your trumpet there.
Yeah. And I think I have to take a trip to Bergen soon.
Good.
Yeah, you better.
But keep blowing your trumpet anyway.
Yeah, I will.
Good.
See you later.
Yeah, bye.
Mr. Pauly, it's nearly the end of the show.
It is getting to that stage, Anthony.
But I think I'd like to get on my high horse one last time. I like that noise.
Yeah. I didn't even have to hire anything or make a soundbite. It was just natural.
It was there.
Tell us, what is grieving you, Anthony?
I've got a fire in my belly,
You
Mr.
do.
Pauly. I can feel it every day, and it's getting hotter. It's getting so hot that I just can't stand by and watch what is going on. What we've been speaking about in Occupy Radio is a big part of what kindles that fire in my belly. I'd like us to light a fire in the bellies of our listeners and make it so hot that they won't stand by and be a spectator, but will get in and participate in affairs that affect them, their families and the whole planet. No matter what your nationality, your religion, your personal beliefs or your politics are, you need to act. We can all change a little corner of our world. Join an organisation, a movement like Occupy, Zeitgeist, Resource-Based Economy, the Venus Project, a charity or an environmental organisation. Start a neighbourhood garden patch and see what grows from that. The more people involved, the more we can hassle the politicians into doing the right thing. The world needs you. The world needs you to care. The world needs you to love. The world needs you to love yourself and love your fellow man. The world needs you to pursue a life, to beat out a path, to live a life that's worthy of you and your latent talents. The world needs you to stand up and say enough. Enough greed, enough corruption, enough lies, enough war, enough hunger, enough economic crises, enough debt, enough crime, enough poverty, enough indiscriminate destruction of our planet for the profit of a few and to the detriment of the rest of every living organism. Everybody has a gift to offer the world that is unique to them, and at some level they know what that gift is. And that is the reason why you're here on this planet.
Anthony Hill, thank you very much. I don't think I need to enhance that at all. I think you've said enough, and you've said it very clearly. And I think that might be all we have to offer you for this program, for this time anyway. And I'd like to firstly thank our studio guest today, Per Rune.
Thank you.
We've learnt a lot from you, especially, Rune, over the last 13 shows.
You've been awesome, Rune.
Thanks.
And,
So have you guys.
It's been a very enjoyable experience. And we must, of course, give a lot of credit to AIDS, who has been our editor. He's our go-to man for anything technical. Thank you, AIDS.
Good on you, AIDS. Say hi to everybody, AIDS. Say goodbye to everybody.
Hello and goodbye.
in the background. And Anthony has concluded the show pretty clearly, so there's not much we have to say except for goodbye. Anthony, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pauly. And listeners, get off your chair.